Have you ever wondered if you could survive a random Titan attack? How would you escape, or would you fight? In this video, we will look at the options you had if you were in the shoes of Eren, Mikasa, or Armin. For this video, I'm splitting up the how to beat options into different categories. So if you are a hot-headed boy that doesn't think stuff through but is passionate about his goal to the point of death, then you are the Eren type, or also called Leroy Jenkins. If you value your friends more than anything else and would go to great lengths to protect them with OP martial arts skills and jealousy to the level of Yuno Gasai, then I guess you are the badass Yandere type. And if you are physically weak and lack confidence but sustain and prevail through mental strength, then you are Armin, the strategy big brain type. So, as you know, we start off in a district of Shiganshina. That means we start out in one of the weakest economic zones in the Attack on Titan universe. That comes along with quite a few handicaps. Just like every weak economic zone, our starting point lacks appropriate resources, which inevitably makes it difficult to carry out any plan. For example, we must assume that we are starting out being physically and mentally tired. The reasons for that should be clear. Our home district is poor, and that means we most likely lack nutritious food, and this leads to a lack of physical strength and endurance. We also lack appropriate raw materials to ensure a well-isolated home. This adds another layer of exhaustion as we aren't able to regain our energy levels with one night of sleep, which normally is the case. In this environment, we are constantly lacking behind. Considering all that and then adding the hard physical labor that people in this district have to endure on a daily basis, we have to admit that our foundation to survive a random Titan attack is pretty bad. Therefore, let me propose beat number 1, preparation, the strategist type. Considering there are hundreds of naked pink Titans literally just few hundred meters away, I think it is safe to assume that they pose the biggest external threat at any given moment. It would make sense to prepare an emergency strategy. I mean, there is nothing more stupid than to live in a present moment without preparing for the future, at least in some way. I mean, even a monk, the most inefficient human being in terms of material wealth, prepares for death every single day by practicing mindfulness. Whether intentionally or not is not the point. The point is, death and illness will hit, and if you aren't prepared for it, then well, good luck is the only thing that could save you. But we at Binge, we create our own luck. And so my first idea would be to create a tunnel system underneath our district. Now, don't get me wrong, I am well aware that the walls reach far underneath the ground. Therefore, it wouldn't be possible to create an emergency tunnel exit reaching over to the inner walls. My tunnel system would function more like a temporary solution in case of a severe sudden emergency, which again will happen at some point, whether be it in 1 or 100 years. But a tunnel system with our given resources would take a long time to dig. But if Andy the friend did it, we can do it too. This is a long-term strategy that mainly ensures the safety of humanity and not the individual itself. Sort of like another wall, but in this case the wall being the ground itself. The advantages are pretty clear. Titans are too big in size to enter any tunnel system. Plus the special Titans will also have their difficulties in an underground labyrinth. While we could escape being eaten up by giant naked babies with big heads, which is a great way to start, we would soon run into food scarcity, which will lead to another problem that is capable of wiping us out. Therefore, the tunnel system is only a temporary solution. Once escaped into the tunnels, we are in need of a military intervention as soon as possible. It would make sense to have strategic tunnel entrances at every major public square, as well as near the gates of the inner walls. Obviously, there must be a food storage within the system, but in our poor neighborhood, that could become a little problematic. Therefore, it might be a smarter move to have individual food storages being taken care of by each family itself. If the government doesn't like my idea for whatever reason and refuses to invest into something like that, I wouldn't care. I would dig my own mini-tunnel shelter underneath my house, sort of like a bunker in our world. If the Titans arrive, I would hide in there for as long as I can given the food storages that I have prepared. Once I'm running out, preferably a few days earlier, I would pack enough food for a 2-day trip. Then I would travel by night into the direction of the inner gates. I would mainly look for ways through houses and narrow alleyways to avoid Titans as much as possible. And the fact that Titans need sunlight to function properly is just another big advantage in this equation. While the general tunnel system would be a great long-term solution, it takes years to prepare. And you know what also takes years to prepare but seems to be a pretty cool and solid idea? Educate and teach military tactics to the common people. The Titans vary in size and velocity. That's bad because it makes every encounter unpredictable. Fact is, without the three-dimensional gear, it won't be possible to fight them effectively nor efficiently. So what can mere peasants do? Well, first, let me complain about the education system within the walls. If I were the supreme leader of that last bit of humanity, I would rule it like Kim Jong-un does, but minus the starvation, unless it means that I have to give up my 37-course lunch. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is, education and military rule ain't so bad. You see, the three-dimensional gear, in my opinion, should be taught in kindergarten. Yep, it does take some talent and it does take some serious effort to acquire that skill. And yep, some will fail just like some people fail in pretty much everything they touch. And that's okay. Fact is, if that gear is taught to everyone, we could ensure a much higher survival rate. Imagine something like this, but executed by random peasants. Just the thought of it makes me happy. So, two things here. Rule the general population with a focus on an even distribution of basic military skills, especially the use of 3D gear, and have a biology class about Titans. In the case of our remodeled education system, the kids will learn about the diverse Titan categories, the weak spots of Titans, and pretty much every other detail that Hanji has passionately discovered over the past few years. With those two simple changes in ruling the general population, we could establish a much more stable society in which the people are taught to help themselves rather than being made dependent on the state. But again, this too will come with another set of problems that would be best kept for another video. But basically, we can assume that if a government shares too much of its power with the people, it runs the risk of heightened internal struggles. But with the constant threat posed by the giant pink superhumans outside the building, I believe a healthy internal solidarity can be maintained even with more power being shared. But what do you do in case of an attack with no way to hide and the gates of the inner walls being either destroyed or too far away? What do you do if you didn't sufficiently prepare? No tunnel system, no escape route, and no 3D gear. Well, it looks pretty bad. In that case, I guess we either have to hide or we have to fight. So for now, let's look at the Eren and Mikasa type. And while Eren is that cat that climbs a 40-meter tree without first contemplating a way back down, Mikasa is that annoyed firefighter that has a big heart for cats. You see, those types tend to function in synergy. One is dedicated to F things up, and the other is here to fix it. So here we go. These are my next ideas for the Leroys and Yandere types out there. Alright, you see, running into head-to-head combat with a 3-meter pink giant with a mouth as big as Walpole's, you will pretty much be eaten up in an instant. So the Leroy approach has to be remodeled for our purpose here. The only weak spot Titans have lies at the back of their neck, and to leverage that weakness, one must cut through that spot with considerable depth. If you haven't trained that specific movement, I think performing that will probably end up not so well. So for us simple-minded Eren types of people, nope, not gonna work. Our strength lies in our passion, so what I would suggest is the following. I would gather those that I can rely most on, presumably my family and my best friends if they happen to be nearby. A too big of a group is bad and will result in you becoming a pretzel stick, so I don't recommend that. What I would say is don't stick with more than 5 people, unless you plan on using a couple of them as bait, no offense. What we first need to find is a place where we can rest for the time being. Any underground place would be the best solution. But another place that is suitable is a narrow space that is too small for a Titan to reach in. Luckily, the architecture of our district includes many narrow alleyways between the buildings. They come in very handy as they allow us to move around without being seen. Now, some of the Titans have no problem in destroying whole buildings, and so hiding between houses is probably one of the last options to pick. In my opinion, you should either hide in a well-grounded building and sit it out, if you have enough faith in your military, or flee to the inner walls where you may run into a chance of a successful escape. Either way, what we need first is time to breathe. And if the attack happens during midday, our aim should be to survive until sunset. The reasons for that are obvious. You see, Titans aren't famous for their brain power. In fact, I don't think they have a brain. All they can is locate humans, reach for them and, well, chop chop chop. Yep, but no thanks. They are dumb, and that's a good thing. Having dumb enemies is a great way to showcase your humble sense of undeniable and godlike superiority. Don't forget that. In fact, they are somewhat just like Eren in reverse. So hear me out. If you're cornered, and you will be if you can't escape a Titan overrun district, you will either have to kill them, or you will have to hide until someone else does it for you. But here we're talking about the Jenkins type of person. So a possible move, considering the suicidal nature of that type, would be to leverage a not so terribly thought through charge. What I mean is this: find a way into the Titan's mouth without being chopped up, then chop yourself through the inside of its neck, stuff it with a gunpowder bomb, and then blow that Titan up from the inside. I guess you could call it a Jaeger bomb. It's a fact that with a bow and arrow we can temporarily blind each and every Titan out there. It is also true that most Titans really love to stretch out their jaws, so entering without being killed is also fairly possible. And there seems to be gunpowder available in the Attack on Titan universe as well. Therefore, it should be possible to manufacture a decent explosive that is able to blow off a Titan's head, including the back of their neck. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that move, but hey, I mean, to each his own, right? Personally, I like the following idea a bit better. Hit and run. Here's what I mean. If you're cornered and you have to run to save yourself, it should be clear that you won't be able to run endlessly. Perhaps you have a horse, and I tell you, living nearby colossal monsters, you better make it your life goal to save for one. Anyway, if you don't happen to have one and you're facing a Titan heads on, you better make sure to grab your bow and arrow and fire at the eyes. That of course implies that you hopefully have trained sufficiently in that area, so that too should be taught to kids while they are still young and receptive to new knowledge and new skills. 2 arrows per Titan should be achievable, but if you happen to face off multiple Titans at once, then well, damn, that's why you should be in a group. And so through that, you may have a chance to prolong your survival just enough so that you eventually make it until sunset. But let's have a look at Shiganshina for a second. It is actually a quite interesting neighborhood. As I have mentioned sometime before, the architectural design takes use of narrow alleyways and closely built structures next to each other. That's a very smart way to avoid Titan contact. I mean, compared to the open field where you will have no chance whatsoever, you at least have ways to protect yourself around here. Even if we extend that thought to the usage of the 3D gear, it will become clear quickly that that design wasn't invented arbitrarily. It does serve an important purpose. We can see that our district isn't all too big. I think you could walk across it within an hour or two, and that would make a distance of about just short of 15 kilometers or 10 miles. Take note of that castle over there. If I didn't plan anything and ignorantly enjoyed a blissful life, completely ignoring the existence of pink superhumans next by, I would straight up aim for that castle if an attack should happen. The great thing about castles are, they're generally more stable and normally come with a dungeon. That means this building is probably the safest zone within this district. If I didn't have a better plan, I would make it up there with as much food as I possibly could carry. You see, survival isn't a destination, it is a process. Every second you survive is a success, and to me, every night seems to be like a checkpoint. During those, you may go out to catch some fresh air, go to scavenge some food and other resources, or just vibe with your refugee fellas, whatever. Another feature that I want to mention is that kennel over there. I want to talk about 2 things here. First, if you screwed up everything you possibly could have screwed up, if you belong to those kind of people, then get your swimsuit ready and head for a dive. Because in this scene, we can clearly see that the bars obstructing the passage are wide enough for a single person to get through. So if you couldn't make it onto one of these tiny emergency boats, fear not, okay? There will be a way through the water without freezing yourself to death. Right, Jack? Yes. Thank you. Anyway, writing about this passage made me wonder if the people in the Attack on Titan universe are able to swim. After all, they don't have access to any ocean. If anything, the ocean to them seems more like the ending of Detective Conan to me. Not sure if it exists. If that's the case, and since there is more than just one water reserve throughout the district, learning how to swim might be your last option in case of a complete meltdown, as we have seen in the first episode. So clearly there are many options you have at your disposal to escape a Titan attack. But fighting a Titan without the help of a team and a well-put strategy is, well, the odds are pretty bad. Unless you have played Dark Souls on max difficulty, then I want to be part of your team. Additionally, there are multiple other systems that we could implement to ensure a higher survival rate, especially to facilitate a more efficient mass exodus when needed. In my opinion, having multiple scout regiments stationed within the pockets of the walls like Shiganshina and Trost makes much more sense. Right now, they're located in rows, which, well, why? Because they are the only regiment that regularly leaves the walls, right? So with a more strategic placement of them, the first attack could have been much more effectively prevented. I mean, isn't that right, Mr. Leeway? Thank you. Another idea to defend yourself against Titans without the need of engaging in direct combat could be the use of a deep trench. You see, to me, seeing that beautiful man-made canal within our district makes me wonder what our current limits are. I mean, it does look like that it is possible for us to dig significant levels of depths. This too would take some time, of course, but since the Titans mostly attack the walls around Shiganshina only, it would make sense to create a deep trench specifically around that area. Every Titan trespassing the walls would fall into that. Now, granted, the trench would perhaps just overflow with Titans at some point and lose its efficacy. But the real value, as always, is time. And so everything that gives us more time to act and flee is a good solution in my opinion, and should at least be considered. But one of my favorite ideas is to relocate the villages to the top of the walls. The good thing about that is you're pretty much safe when normal Titans are trespassing the walls downstairs. But if the Colossal Titan appears, then he would wipe out humanity like I wipe my table after lunch. Not good. So perhaps we should only relocate to the top of the inner part of the Shiganshina pocket. That would be difficult to reach even for that massive dude. We have also seen manual elevators transporting horses up and down. They can transport at least 2 horses at once, which would mean they could facilitate up to 30 people as well. That's not too bad. The problems would only arise when people are in need to conduct farming endeavors. But technically speaking, you could also transport soil up there as well. So if that isn't the problem, then surely the problem must be water, right? Well, yes, but that too could be transported with the elevators. However, that would take, it would take quite some time and many times back and forth. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that there are interesting possibilities one might risk to take. Fact is, new ideas push the invention of new technologies. For example, if the given elevators could be accelerated with the help of the same gas mechanism that is used within the 3D gear, we could ensure efficient commuting between the ground and the top of the walls. Do you remember those ancient Roman waterways, the aqueducts? That could be a sweet idea to distribute water flow passing through every corner up there. And since our population has enough gas resources, an artificial water pump could see the light as well at some point. What do you think? What are some of your ideas that you can imagine the people of the Attack on Titan universe could come up with? Share your thoughts below, and if you like this video, do me a favor and smash that like and leave a subscribe. Thanks for watching.